Hey everyone, my name is Shanice and welcome back to my channel. I am very sick, so I wanted to keep today's video a little bit short. I don't know what I have. I'm hoping it's just the common colds, although I've been getting these quite often this year. I think this is the fourth time I've gotten sick and it's only April. Today I just wanted to recommend some books, specifically short story collections. I love short story collections. I really started getting into them around 2019 when I started my graduate program. It's kind of like the way that people usually get into fiction writing at a graduate level. You kind of study short stories, read more of them, write your own, and move on from there. So a few of the short story collections that I will be recommending today, I actually read through some of my graduate school classes, and they're genuinely amazing collections. So it's not just like I'm throwing them in there for any other reason, but they're awesome. And I'm sprinkling in some other ones too. My main goal here is kind of to target some of you guys who maybe don't normally read short story collections. The ones that I've chosen tend to be written in a more traditional style. They're not as challenging on a line level. I think they're working through more common story formats, and I think they're a little bit more accessible to read. That doesn't mean that they're any less complex or probing into the human condition or anything. Again, I love all of these. I'm genuinely recommending books that I love. The first book that I'm going to recommend is called Night at the Fiestas. It's by Kirsten Valdez-Quaid. This is one of my favorite collections of all time. The first story, Nemesia, is honestly one of the best short stories ever written. This delves deep into characters' past lives, a desire to escape their current surroundings and find new homes, but also revisit old homes. It's about violence, it's about loss, and like a lot of Kirsten Valdez-Quaid's work, it delves a lot into faith and religion and how culturally important it can be. So highly recommend. Seriously, one of the best collections I've ever read. The next short story collection that I'm recommending is called Too Much Happiness by Alice Munro. It's the only Alice Munro I've read, but this pretty much cemented her in my mind as a master of the short story. She's already lauded as that without, my having read her, but I finally can have an opinion on her after reading this collection. She just knows exactly what to do with a story. Like, sometimes I'm reading it and I don't know where it's going, but it goes to unexpected places in the most correct way, if that makes any sense. So like, there are twists, but they're all logical twists. It's not like, she's shocking you by throwing something random at you. I think this would be good to explore short stories of various lengths. There's the titular short story, which is at the very end, which is the longest of all the other stories. These are existential. They're also pretty violent. There's one from the perspective of children, which turns exceptionally cruel. But again, even though the themes might be maybe dramatic, the writing is so centered and grounded. Like, none of the characters feel like caricatures, so superb. Another collection that I highly recommend is Bloodchild by Octavia E. Butler. Bloodchild alone is also one of the best and most unsettling short stories I've ever read. It has a little bit of body horror. It really does like literally get under your skin, but if you want a short story to be as visceral as possible, I think this showcases writing that can do that. Also, this has, a tinge of sci-fi, as Butler was known to incorporate in her own novels, long-form fiction. Also, the edition that I have of it, includes an essay from Butler in which she writes about her writing process, which is very inspirational, kind of like a how to continue past insecurity as a writer, and reinforcing the idea that talent can only get you so far. It's more about dedication, discipline, practice. The writers who tend to succeed are the ones who do all of those things, not really the ones with like natural gift and proclivity for writing, but those who nurture that talent. Next is a collection by Queen Jhumpa Lahiri. This is the book that got me into Lahiri. This book actually won a Pulitzer Prize, and I don't think there have been other short story collections to have won the Pulitzer Prize. This is Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri. She writes a lot from the perspective of Bengali Americans, really infusing her culture, her food, her language insecurities into her work, which I loved as, you know, an aspiring writer who wants to infuse my own work with cultural insights. I think she's just incredible at doing that. And the first story, A Temporary Matter, is again one of these like best short stories I've ever read of all time. Such tension building in such a short amount of time. It's really phenomenal to be studied. This is one of those that I did discover through my graduate program, and no regrets. I love Lahiri, and she's a goddess. She can do no wrong. Another collection that I have to recommend on this video is The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jackson. Hands down, one of my favorite collections, also by one of my favorite writers. Shirley Jackson writes from the perspectives of introverts, but not in a stereotypical way. She just gets it. She gets me. She writes awkward insecurity so well, so acutely, with such nuance and grace and sympathy. This collection, of course, is named after one of the most famous short stories ever, The Lottery, and with reason, because it's a good story. Okay, it's just a great story. Definitely read it if you haven't. But also, another one of my favorites of all time, The Demon Lover, is included in this collection. So creepy. I want to read it like every year because of how it ends. It's always sat with me. It's just so unsettling. And again, Shirley Jackson writes nerves and introspection so well. Amazing. Next up is actually one of my favorite books that I read last year. One of my short story collection challenge book picks for last year, specifically December. This is 10th of December by George Saunders. I would be remiss not to include him in a short story collection video of any kind. This is again another masterclass in short fiction, in my opinion. The same as with Alice Munro, the same as with Jhumpa Lahiri. George Saunders, he really knows what he's doing, and he dabbles in different genres, so this is not just going to be, you know, classically dramatic, but there are sci-fi elements here. Some are written from very troubling psychological perspectives. There's a lot of humor in this too. Exhortation is a short story, although it's kind of written as a letter. Hilarious and unfortunately very relatable if you work. It's another collection about loss, despair, violence, war, class, desire. I mean, it's all in here. This is a perfect collection, honestly, one of the best. Next, I am just going to recommend one short story. It's this author's only short story. It's called Recitative, French really for recitative. This is by Toni Morrison. I recommend going into this blind. I don't really want to say what it's about because I don't want to ruin anything, but essentially there are two young girls, Twyla and Roberta, and we follow them as they grow up in different classes in different ways. We see the privileges that one is afforded over the other. Toni Morrison is experimenting with racial writing in this, so lots of details are withheld from the reader. And if you read the edition with Zadie Smith's introduction, I would say read the introduction after you read the short story. It explains a lot, and so I wouldn't want anything to be, you know, ruined for you in reading the short story, but highly recommend this one. It is very short. This was also one of my favorites the year that I read. I think 2022, if I'm correct. And then lastly, I'm not necessarily going to recommend a specific book, but if you are interested in just dabbling into short story writers, aren't really ready yet to dedicate yourself to reading an entire book by one author, Then I would recommend maybe some of the O. Henry Prize winner books. They compile the winners into a published work. So the winners chosen last year were published in an edition that came out at the end of last year. And actually one of my classmates won one of the O. Henry short story prizes, so she's featured in that edition. You can also try checking out the Best American Short Fiction compilation books. I would say focus on choosing an edition that was edited by a writer that you know you love. Won't guarantee that you'll have the same taste as them, but you know, it's a starting point. And also you might want to subscribe to a literary journal. Plowshares is a great one. The Southern Review is great. The Common is also fantastic. You know, there are so many out there that need support. It's a great way to discover new writers too. Of course, these journals do publish known authors. That is a major reason why they're still open and running and make money, because, you know, they have to balance between promoting already established authors and discovering new authors. So you'll get a mixed bag, but it's always exciting when you just find that one story that you absolutely love. That's how I discovered the author Catherine Voss, by reading The Common. Highly recommend. So not a specific recommendation for any book, but just kind of a guide for anyone who's interested in discovering short stories, because honestly, they're great. You can read one in the morning to start your day, or read one at the end of the day to, you know, right before you go to bed. It's just a great way to get a full arc of a story in one sitting, instead of starting and stopping with a novel. Nothing against novels. I adore novels, obviously, but, you know, there are benefits to short fiction as well. So thank you for watching this video. I hope my toad voice and my congestion wasn't too distracting and awful, but crossing my fingers I'm not sick next week. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next week, healthier, I promise. Bye.